Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to day 85 of Humanity Rising. Every day since 22nd of May, with a break we took in late August, Ubiquity University and upwards of 400 partnering organizations from all over the world have provided essentially a 2-hour open space every day so that people globally can come together to share their experiences of what it's like navigating through this extraordinary pandemic with all of us in some form of lockdown and social distancing and wearing masks and paying very heightened attention to hygiene. The pandemic continues 6 months on. India recently set a daily record at nearly 80,000 cases in a single 24-hour period. The United States continues to lead the world in the number of exposures and deaths by several degrees of magnitude. We're in a situation where the depth of the crisis that humanity faces is being revealed day by day, along with the fragility of our institution. How we navigate, how we thrive, is a question and matter of central human concern. So Humanity Rising for Ubiquity University and our partnerships, and for those partners, we have over 40 partners that are live streaming every day to 15 to 20,000 people, are really holding this endeavor as a sacred trust at a moment of deep volatility, danger, potential for humankind. A moment in which the scientists worldwide are telling us we are quite literally running out of time. So how we use this moment, how we come together, the choices that we make are going to determine the destiny of our world. So I want to welcome everybody and thank you all for joining day by day. It's been a deeply gratifying experience. We come now to a dialogue which we've been having consistently through Humanity Rising with a very wise man, David Carr, that we'll get to in a moment. And I want to transition to this dialogue by saying that one of the most consistent themes over the last 85 days has been the importance of heart coherence. The sessions that we had on heart coherence were some of the most popular sessions of the entire series so far. The pandemic is generating incoherence. Our politics are generating incoherence. The news is generating incoherence. So how we generate our own internal individual coherence and group coherence is probably the most important single thing that any of us can do right now. And all the data shows that the most effective way to create heart coherence is just to take a moment, even 60 seconds, 2 or 3 minutes, to put your awareness on your heart, and in a spirit of gratitude that you're alive, just listen to your heartbeat, maybe with your hand over your heart so it's easier to feel. Now, as we embark on phase 2 of Humanity Rising, every day we're going to start and end with heart coherence. Just a moment. for us to tune ourselves to that which most deeply matters in this time of chaos, and to feel our own heart and the heart of all of us on the call and all the light communities around the world. I would like to now introduce and welcome my co-moderator for this next phase of Humanity Rising, Sabina von Gafka. You all know her. Sabina, it's always a pleasure. And Sabina will lead us into our heart coherence meditation and begin our program. Sabina.
Thank you, Jim. And thank you to all of you who are joining us. I don't know if you can see me as yet, but hopefully you can hear me. All of you who are joining us now. And thank you, Jim, for also reminding us about the importance of heart coherence. And to start with that space, I've taken a little candle that says, with love, to all of us in this space, lighting it for us as a little loveful way to open this space. And before I navigate us just very briefly in a 1-minute heart coherence, I just wanted to also, for those who maybe not joined yesterday, talk a little bit about the nuggets from yesterday, because we truly had a profound session yesterday that really taps into all of us. And the title was the title of a book called One Moment of Choice. And it's so important for us to remember that we are in a time, and we're in that moment where we really have the need and the capacity to make the choice. And remembering, like the panel said yesterday, that our worldview is very much also navigating us to the choices that we make. And if we tap into our own heart coherence and our own inner truths, we can also maybe shift our worldview and align it with the future that we want to create. And also quoting Jean Houston, who also was with us yesterday, a phenomenal woman, spiritual leader, thought leader in every essence, who also urged us to remember the importance of imagination. That imagination truly is the catalyst for us to create a new narrative and a unified narrative, and really use that imagination to also imagine what kind of future we want, how we want to interact with each other, how we want to be, how we want to act, and so forth. So imagination is at the core of everything when it comes to also catalyzing change. And I also wanted to refer to, I think Jane, she said something so wisely. She said, unity is our power, diversity is our strength, and love in action is our hope. So before the dialogue that Jim will facilitate with David Karchare, who is the spiritual leader of Sunrise Ranch in Colorado, he's also an author, speaker, poet, and workshop leader and thought leader on Primal Spirituality. And he wrote a book called Becoming a Sun, that sort of is a guide to the human journey, both individually and collectively. And he believes that humanity is evolving to become a conscious expression of the creative power within us, and that we have the power to radiate that into our world. But in order to really radiate that and become conscious, we need to connect with ourselves. It all starts with ourselves. We cannot work for peace in the world if we are not in peace with ourselves. We need to find inner peace. Another great visionary and leader, the Dalai Lama, once said. So I sort of want to navigate that into touching into a superpower that we all have innately, and that is essential for our life and for our connection to ourselves, and that is our breath. And becoming more conscious of our breath is also how we can connect with ourselves, and thereby also connect with everything that's going on around us. And that's why Jim and I thought doing a heart coherent meditation for just 1 minute for all of us who are joining here today can just be a way to connect with ourselves and really create that space for us, that sacred space of this 1.5 hours that we're here together. And hopefully you can bring that feeling after this session as well. So with that, with some beautiful, soft music in the background. I invite you all to just relax if you're sitting, standing, lying, whatever you're doing. Release all the tension from your body and close your eyes and just start to notice your breath. And I invite you to, on the count of 5 or 4 if you prefer, you do an inhale and then an exhale. I'll navigate you in the beginning just to get you into a rhythm so we get a coherence in our rhythm. So inhale on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And just continue the inhale and the exhale. Find your rhythm. And if you want to, place your hand on your heart, or both hands on your heart, or one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. And really connect with that heart of yours. Continue to breathe and feel your heartbeat. Inhale into your heart space. Exhale and inhale. And when you inhale, imagine us inhaling into each other's heart spaces, feeling that energy that connects us, that coherence. We may be digitally online, but we are all connected. And just feel that gratitude and love. Wherever you are, inhale. Exhale. Inhale. I am loved. Exhale. I am loved. And just feel that gratitude of a moment of breath. And gradually just come back. Open your eyes. Hopefully, we can all feel a bit more of that interconnected and heart coherence. And heart coherence, I mean, you can do the breath in any way, but just 4 or 5 seconds in, 4 or 5 seconds out. And after a minute or two, there is a coherence of the body, mind, and soul. And if you do it every day, you can really see gradual changes where you become more aligned, less stressful, and connect more with your body, which is essential. And with that, I would like to hand over the word to our beautiful, amazing, poetic alchemist and her soothing voice and her poetry that will soothe our hearts. So Kim Rosen, I hand over the word to you.
Poetry alchemist. I may use that as the sign on my door. How beautiful. Well, Sabina, that was exquisite. Thank you. Really exquisite. If you've been with Humanity Rising in other dialogues, you may have heard me say that poetry is my form of prayer, really. It's not only my form of prayer, poetry was born into humanity as a form of prayer. 1.8, billion years ago, there was an expression of passion in the heart that some pre-human being needed to express to another pre-human being, like we need to express to one another. And it didn't fit into the sign language that was the language of the time. It didn't fit into the system of grunts and signs that we used to communicate effectively. This was beyond that. And that's when the first words were born. And the first words were born because of a feeling that had to arise that could not fit into ordinary language. So I call on the words of the beloved poet Mary Oliver this morning. And it's a poem that probably many of you have heard or read before, and yet never right now, never in this moment, as this being, in this fresh breath that you are, that I am right now. This is a poem called The Summer Day by Mary Oliver. And this music is by the extraordinary musical alchemist named Jamie Sieber. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass. The one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass. The one who is eating sugar out of my hand. Who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed. Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Thank you. It's The Summer Day by Mary Oliver and music by Jamie Sieber.
Kim, you are sublime. There is no other word that comes to mind at the moment. What are all of us going to do with our single, precious, wild lives? That's a question for a man like David Karchare, spiritual leader of Sunrise Ranch, member of the Emissaries of Light, a man who spent all of his waking life on a journey of the soul. So, David, how would you comment on the poem that Kim just recited? How would you answer the question, how are you going to live your one wild life?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jim. And thank you, Kim, for that beautiful poem. Wildness is an interesting thing. We tend to use the word to mean something like chaotic, but actually the truth of wild things is anything but. And we are meant to live a wild life, which means a free life. And I've been meditating through this pandemic how the culture in which we live has so often domesticated us and defined for us who we are, instead of the other way around, which is really how it's meant to be. We are, as human beings, creating the culture in which we live. And if we turn around and then let ourselves be defined by the culture, you have a circular kind of situation, and we lose touch with our own wildness, our own primal impulse to be ourselves, to be free, be a free people. So I don't know another way to live that is worthwhile other than wild and free, not meaning chaotic, but simply following the deepest impulses of the soul. And I believe we get off as an individual or as a culture when we don't do that. And I think it takes care to follow the impulses of your soul so that we don't end up doing something erratic or thoughtless. So I think that's a life of deep meditation, to really truly understand the deepest calling of your soul, and then to thoughtfully live from that place in your life, and to let that unfold in your life. And what a wild adventure it is to do that. And it does seem like during this pandemic, each of us in our own way has the opportunity to begin again, to engage more deeply with that wildness of our soul, our own primal nature, to have union with that in ourselves, and then re-enter our life from that perspective, from that standpoint. So we have that opportunity individually. I know we each do, and then we have that opportunity together to go back to the beginning. So I use that phrase, primal spirituality, to talk about the beginning of things. It's the beginning of our own life, that primal impulse. And you could look at it historically, so the history of our own life, but it's also the primal place in the present moment where all things begin, which is the only place they can begin, which is right here and now. So that's what I'm thinking about, Jim.
Thank you, David. I'd love to begin our deepening dialogue with just listening to your odyssey. You've been deeply immersed in spiritual matters for a very, very long time. You have been recognized for that far and wide. I would love to just hear a thematic narrative of your life. How did your spiritual awakening occur? How were you directed? What's the wildness that you have been tracking over your sentient existence?
Well, that's a big topic for you, Jim. Thanks for the question. So I think that, like for most people I knew or know, it all started for me at a point of anguish. You know, at a point of anguish, we have the opportunity to think more deeply, to touch in more deeply to what's really going on, to what the deepest craving in our soul is. And that's how it was for me. And so for me, it started in my teens. And I was searching, like many of us were at the time, searching for what my life was going to be about. And I knew that that was intrinsically tied up with where the world was going. And not too different from today. I looked around and I thought, this is not going to a good place. What was happening in the world, and what is the answer for the world in which I live? And at the same time, I knew that the answer for my own life was tied up with all that. And to find out what the answer was for the world in which I lived, I had to find out what the answer was for me. And I tried many things. I was really interested in community. So I lived in a kibbutz in Israel for a time in 1969. And then I started a what we called a commune up in central Maine with friends in the northeastern part of the United States. And somewhere in all that, I met somebody from Sunrise Ranch, and I'd tried various spiritual things and political things. I'd led a march from my high school to protest the war in Vietnam and marched down in Washington. And like I say, there was a lot of anguish going on for me. And I met this man, Dr. Bill Bain from Sunrise Ranch, and his essential message was that the answer for a human being is the answer for all of humankind. And that answer lies within each of us. And it awaits us accessing it and expressing it, manifesting it, embodying it. You could characterize that answer in a lot of ways. It is the deepest creativity of the human soul, the fountain of life within us. It is the profound nature of love that is within each of us, that desires to express itself as a human being, to bring care and reverence for life. It is the uncompromising truth of who we are. When I met that in Bill, it just, somehow everything in me resonated with it. And to me, that word resonance is a big word and really important, because our soul resonates with what's true. So when we touch it in ourselves, we vibrate with it, and it wakes us up, and it uplifts us. And when we hear that, what is that resonance, that truth from somebody else that is universal, that is not only true of them, but true of us, that starts to vibrate in us. And sometimes we have the joy and the honor of sharing that kind of a space with a group of people, which I know we're sharing right here and now with Humanity Rising. And these days we have the opportunity of doing that online and feeling that very deep resonance.
Ooh, David, you cut out. The screen is frozen. Rick, is there anything we can do?
We still have it. David's still here. Why don't we see if we get the signal back, Jim?
Okay.
Hey, Jim.
Oh, there you are.
Okay.
There you are. You cut out, David, for about 15 seconds.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just connecting with that word wildness, and just saying that that's what happened for me, is that I connected with that in myself. And so I've done many things in my life, having touched that core piece of spirituality. And there are other pieces of awakening that happened for me, I think, as for all of us, that when we are true to that creative impulse in us, that it wakes us up. And there are various levels of awakening. We just become aware of more and more. And I think particularly if we're uncompromising, when we don't compromise ourselves in our life, we don't compromise who we are and what we have to bring. That doesn't mean we get it all right or perfect. It just means that we don't give up. We don't give way to discouragement. We don't sell out. And then that resonance within us activates us, and all kinds of creativity happens. And I've done many things in my life. I've taught school, I've done business things, I've put on programs of many kinds, and I've written a book and a lot of poetry, and I've written music. And true to my love for community, I've led the Sunrise Ranch community since the year 2000 in a particular way. And then with my friends there, just had all kinds of adventures, putting on programs, welcoming people to come, putting on a music festival at Sunrise Ranch, and then doing programs with people around the world that celebrated what is moving within us, and inviting people to their journey to discover their own emotional and spiritual intelligence. And that's really what that book I wrote is about, Becoming a Son. And what I discovered being with people is that to such a high degree, so many people that I've met don't know themselves. They don't know how to talk about what's happening for themselves. All the wild things that are happening inside, they don't have a name for it. They don't have a way of dealing with it. It tends to get just kind of glossed over. And yet all that wildness inside is trying to tell us something and trying to activate us to be something in our life. And we shouldn't be scared of it. We should make friends with it, understand it, embrace it, and find that it's not chaotic. In fact, the very opposite. It brings a different kind of order, the order of natural things to our life. And it takes us out of all the ruts that are not only outside ourselves and the culture in which we're living, but have ended up impacting us inside. And that was really the shock that I was wakened out of as a teenager, because I looked around at the world and I thought, you know, the way the world's going seems really dangerous and really not antithetical to life itself and full of falsity. And it was bad enough to look at the US government at the time, look at the war in Vietnam, look at so many things in our culture that were like that. But the really shocking thing was to realize that my own soul had got infected with that culture. And if we're honest, I think that's what happens for us. We see that it's not just out there, it's in here. And if I'm going to do something about what's out there, I have to, very importantly, do something about what's in here. And then that gives me something important to say, an important truth that I know to share. I think that's what we're finding. And maybe this pandemic is telling us that there's another layer of that for us as awake people to come to. I think it's been that kind of opportunity for me, for sure, and for other people that I speak to. I noticed in talking to people who are very aware of the culture that we're in, and that there had to be something new brought, that there was a certain discouragement that had entered in pre-pandemic. Like, what are we going to do? So if we were discouraged then, we could really be discouraged now. But I think we've been sent into a very deep place in ourselves, a very deep place of discovery, to find the essence of what's next. And I know many of us have touched that, and I know that's what's happening for people connected with Humanity Rising. We're touching something that is important for this next cycle of what we're doing and where we're going and what we have to bring to humanity. And so we have to use the time wisely. I sense that this is a new beginning. The truth is, we spent years and centuries, and if you want to count it that way, even millennia to get to this place of crisis in the world. This has been a long time brewing, everything associated with this pandemic and everything happening for us now. We've been working on this one for a long time, and it's not going to change in a day. But what we can do is begin again in ourselves, begin again together. Start at a place of origin that's true and right and beautiful and loving, that is a place of oneness that we can know together, a place of new origin, a primal place. So to me, that's what's important. So in terms of my life story, I skipped over a lot, but anyway, got up to today somehow.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Stanley has asked a question about the future of spirituality. And I'd like to frame that question, David, by going a little bit more deeply into your analysis of the pandemic. I think it's a very important point that all of human history up to this point has led us to this point. And that is a profound observation and calls into question some very deep implications and and soul searching for how did we go so wrong. But how are you 6 months into this pandemic? How are you interpreting the pandemic? Was this something that just came out of human malfeasance? Is it a signal from the earth? Is it as big an event as people are saying it is? Is it a speed bump that we're just going to move beyond? How are you analyzing the pandemic as it's unfolding?
Yeah, I have to say, Jim, it's obviously, of massive impact to humankind and to virtually all of us. So it is massive. Nonetheless, I don't think it's the big one. I think it's an opportunity if we'll take it. So I see it that way. There are so many factors that led to it. Here we are, and we have had a chance to see how plugged into culture we are, how dependent on culture we are. And I think that that's quite an opportunity. So we've had a chance to get shaken, if you will, get shaken loose, and had a chance to go deeper and find a truer and deeper foundation for our lives individually and then together.
So you see this basically as a wake-up call from the earth to compel humanity to a deeper analysis and greater commitment to moving forward in a new way.
Yeah, absolutely. If we'll take it that way,
Yeah.
we have to be open to it and see it for what it is. There's so much of a desire, I noticed, to get back to normal. I think we sense there's no getting back to normal here. And it's not just the pandemic. There's so much else that's going on the planet that is telling us that we, the people, have to come together to create a new culture. We can't just follow after the culture that seems to have been created for us, find our little parts in it. We have to recreate this culture and take responsibility for it, not just acquiesce to it. So I think it's that kind of opportunity to find our own self-reliance, and then our self-reliance together as people, and let something very different be created as we come to a place that transcends our separateness, essentially. So think about humanity rising. Isn't it about that? Rising up to a place where all the things that have divided us as human beings have been not eradicated, but we're just at a different place where we found our commonality. We found our oneness. And we've been saying that for some time. We've had the idea of oneness. But I think we're at a point of, if we're going to be real about this, we have to really find the conscious practices that really affirm our oneness. We have to find how we act like it, not just talk about it, but how we actually integrate together to create a new culture around the world, where the very nature of what we're sharing as a worldwide community truly changes, and we pay attention to what it means to be a worldwide human community. As John Lewis said in the United States, the beloved community. What does it mean for us to become the beloved community in whatever groupings that we're in, first of all? And what are the practices of emotional and spiritual intelligence that lead us to really live beloved community together? And how do we prove that out in whatever groupings we find ourselves in, whatever communities we find ourselves in? And then how do we begin to practice that as humankind and the culture at large? It's like, you just want to say, like, come on now, it's time, right? It is time, because if we look at the problems we're facing as humankind, don't they come down to that, really? And I believe we have to put that squarely on the table. And I know in so many circles that I move in, people are afraid to talk about spirituality. But that's what we're really talking about. And I'm not talking about religion, and I'm not talking about a particular spiritual path. I'm talking about our common spiritual origin. And however you want to practice your spirituality, or whatever names you want for that, whatever beliefs you want to put forward, don't we have to come down to finding our universal spirituality? I don't mean to deny anybody's religion or anybody's spiritual practice. I'm just saying in everyday life, we need to find spiritual values and a spiritual experience that engages that dimension of who we are for real as we interchange with each other and doing the everyday things that we do. And where that goes wrong, everything else goes wrong. And that's the world we're living in. Our economics go wrong, our politics go wrong, our culture goes wrong, our science goes wrong when that common spirituality is given up on. Now, I do believe we have to get back to that for real. Find that originating place of true values and true connection with that source of wisdom, that source of love that's within us all. For real, for real.
Well, it's within this context, David, that I'd like to go deeper into primal spirituality, because that is something that you have been deeply immersed in. And I'd like for you to describe it and maybe distinguish primal spirituality from, all the other spiritualities that are out there. What are the distinguishing characteristics? It's one thing to say that all is one, but we all have our different entry points, so that there'll be particular qualities, characteristics to primal spirituality that I think you have been very deeply immersed in and would be worth sharing, because I know you believe that that's a powerful tool in the regeneration of the human spirit at this time.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Jim. So the word primal simply means first. And we could look at it historically. So if you look at it that way, primal spirituality is the spiritual impulse that's behind every great world religion and every true spiritual path. There was an impulse there, a knowing there, an awakening to something. And what happened was somebody awoke to that reality that woke them up, and then they sought a way to share it. So they talked about their experience. They used words to describe it, perhaps brought beliefs and practices that they thought would help people to experience it. So if you look at the world's religions, you'll find that in every case, there was some great awakening. It didn't start with a spiritual teaching. They didn't think, oh, I'll go out and I'll teach these beliefs and I'll teach these practices. That's not how it started. It started with awakening. That was the point of it all. And so they sought to share it. The people that they shared that awakening with, well, they did their best to awaken to it too, to get the point of what was being shared. And then they sought to share what was shared with them. And before you know it, we had books and practices. But where did the awakening go? The primal spirituality, the thing that first awakened it all, for so many of the followers, just went by the wayside. And we ended up with religious buildings, texts, practices. We ended up with names for God. And then all those things are different. And so all of us who ended up with those beliefs and practices and so on, we thought we had something different. Where my belief is there's only one thing to awaken to. It was the same thing that awakened Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, or anybody else. There's only one thing to awaken to. And so historically, that's primal spirituality. It's that impulse that awakened anybody. But the same is true for you and I. We were born into the world spiritual. I don't believe any of us had to go to church to become spiritual. We didn't have to meditate to become spiritual or pray. We didn't have to go to Sunday school or anything else. That little baby who was born into the world is as spiritual as any of us will ever get. We can grow in our strength and our wisdom as an adult so that we can practice our spirituality in a way that the baby can't. We can live it. We can manifest it in a way that the baby can't.
Ooh, looks like
Help us to connect to that primal spirituality and to live it and embody it.
Would you say that there's only one thing to wake up to? What is that one thing?
Well, we could name it all kinds of things. You know, in the West, at least in English, we could name it as God, or there are all kinds of words for that one reality. You know, I could share my favorites. It's the
please.
impulse of life itself. I love some of the Hebrew words for that. El Shaddai, Elohim, Yehovah, Shekinah. Beautiful words. I don't want to impose my words on anybody else. I just want to, just share the vibration of those things as they resonate in me. We could simply call it love, universal love. I love that phrase that Martin Luther King and John Lewis used, beloved community. You know, ultimately, the whole earth is meant to be a beloved community, including all of the natural world. But we're meant to share that as human beings, to know it together. In my book, I talk about some of the dimensions of that reality. I call it simply God the possible, God the means, and God the manifest, meaning that it's all one reality that has many different dimensions to it, but all one reality. I think the important thing is that within us as human beings, that there is wisdom and power, the power of love, available to us as a human being and to all of us as humanity. So there is something within us that's intrinsic or innate to us as a human being and innate to all of us that will bring us together in love if we let it, and that will guide us and make us wise if we let it. But we have to open to that for it to be activated in and through us. I think that's the important thing. And so a true spiritual practice, it's not just to alleviate the pain of living in the world or to ease our human experience. It's to reconnect us with that innate wisdom and love that's within us, acknowledging that there's some kind of disconnection going on here, right? You can't look at the world and not think that we've gotten disconnected with the goodness of who humankind is, if you believe that we are something good, and I do. I mean, in our better moments, I think we look around at other people and think how beautiful, how wonderful we are as human beings. And then we look at the natural world and look at it's, even with all that we've done, it's just so amazing. I was in Lon just a couple of days ago and sat out over the estuary where Dylan Thomas wrote. And I felt like I hooked into what he touched as he wrote Under Milkwood and his other poetry. Because I looked out at the estuary and there it was, as it had been running for centuries. And yet in some way, I'm sure, different on that morning than ever before. And the sunlight was on the ripples of the water. And it wasn't like it was tired of doing it. It was doing it like it had never done it before. And the birds were there and everything. And you just felt the preciousness of this world, the beauty of what this world is and what it can be, and our part in all that. So if you really believe that that's true, if in touching it, you don't just walk away and become disillusioned, but believe that which you touched, we could actually live that. We could know that. We could know that between ourselves. We could find the underlying order of our relationship together that's somehow intrinsic to who we are. That we are, yes, individual and unique. That's the diversity part that was spoken of earlier. But we are part of one being, as our motto in the United States says, "E pluribus unum," out of the many one. And the miraculousness of who we are each so unique and we are diverse. And they're all, it runs in races and ethnicities and all of that. But even as an individual human being, we are unique. And yet we are intrinsically together as part of one body of humankind, one being together, one family. And connecting to our primal spirituality is getting in touch with that connective reality. That doesn't mean that everything else we do is unimportant. Our economics and our politics and our science, it's all important. But what's going wrong in all those things is based in something that's behind all that, which is this disconnect that we have going from our primal spirituality. And for the most part, we can't even talk about it. We don't have language to talk about it. It's not polite at the dinner table to talk about religion, as they say. So we don't, and then we cede that whole area of our life to our culture. So we don't want to offend anybody's religion. Then we don't want to impose what somebody is going to think of as religion. So we can't even talk about it. We can't have an intelligent conversation about such things. So we have to invent some kind of language that transcends all the taboos around our spirituality. And we think we have taboos around our sexuality. I think our taboos around our spirituality are even greater.
Let me ask you, let me deepen this notion of the primal, because when I think of primal, David, I think of aboriginal, I think of indigenous, I think of shamanic. And I think it's worth noting that the earliest spiritual reflections of humankind, millennia upon millennia upon millennia ago, back into the prehistoric Paleolithic times, as far as we can gather, human beings in their most primordial understood that it was the relationship with nature, with the mother, that was the origin of all things. And in a fundamental way, and this point that Diane Skidmore made just a few minutes ago in the chat, the breakage that you talk about is really the result of our separation from nature. So my question to you is, in your understanding of primal spirituality, how does the relationship between humanity and the natural order play in your notion of primal spirituality? You've talked a lot about human primordiality, but the human has emerged out of Gaia. We are Earth. We are the environment. We are nature. And so I would have thought that would be inherent in the notion of primal spirituality.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, we are part of this whole field of nature. So it's not as if we are by our nature. I read a really remarkable book about the cross, which is thought to be Christian, but it greatly predated Christianity. And the author said that what he imagined was that the very first representation of spirituality was the cross, when somebody on a cave wall created a horizontal line representing themselves, representing the whole of nature, the whole of the earth, all of matter, and then drew a vertical line that intersected it to show that human being themselves and then all of nature is shot full of cosmic energy. And that's what's going on. We are, in that sense, just like nature. We are a part of nature. We are shot full of cosmic energy. And we have a unique part in all that, which has to do with consciousness. So you look around, and what I believe about all that, I could say what I know about all that, is that it is all conscious. So the rocks are conscious, and the geese are conscious. It's all consciousness. Yet we have to admit that there are qualities of consciousness that are present for us that on the one hand get us into trouble. The rocks can't create an atomic bomb or global warming, at least not like we can. So the qualities of consciousness that we have get us into trouble. But on the other hand, those same qualities of consciousness, if they were in tune with nature, would do something else. And to some extent too, but so to such a degree, because of this breakage in our of connection with our primal spirituality, our thinking has run amok. We are designed to be the consciousness of the planet, nothing more and nothing less. So we're designed simply to be this planet conscious. Now, conscious, it means something intellectual. So we've gotten maybe some of the intellectual parts of all that, and over the last several centuries since the Age of Enlightenment, and if you want to go back earlier, there has been this tremendous development of the intellect, but there's another part of consciousness that's required to connect to our primal spirituality. And to be the consciousness of this planet, it takes something else. And in my book, it's what I speak of as emotional intelligence. So that phrase is being used so often to describe how we become more successful in our culture. If you become emotionally intelligent, you'll become a better business manager. You will sell better. You will be more effective in your professional life if you gain emotional intelligence. Well, that's a very limited meaning of that phrase. To be truly emotional intelligent is to connect to the intelligence of the planet, to truly be the consciousness of the planet, not just the intellect that is going to figure it all out. And by the way, there's some very intelligent people these days who think that they can solve all the world's problems scientifically. Well, maybe they could if the emotional intelligence was there for humankind, but there's something so off in our emotional intelligence, it's causing us not to be able to access our intellectual intelligence or to be able to utilize it, because we're in so many ways acting crazy as humankind, because there's something that happened to the human heart that got us disconnected from our primal spirituality, which means disconnected from the planet, so that we're not the consciousness of the planet. We're some kind of, we speak about the pandemic, but I mean, it's a hideous thought, but we become some kind of viral entity on the planet that the planet is dealing with, as opposed to the consciousness of the planet that is looking toward its own vitality, its own thriving. So where is all that going wrong? Is it because we're not intellectually smart enough? And we're smarter at that level than we've ever been. We have more information than we've ever had. But there's something gone wrong in the heart, so that we're disconnected spiritually.
Well, thank you for that. And that leads, I think, to our final question to you, bringing it up to today. Extinction Rebellion has mobilized civil disobedience across the United Kingdom and have upset traffic around Westminster in London. They believe that the only real way forward is just to begin to stage massive civil disobedience. As you view our current moment, David, what would be one thing you would say we could do that could truly make a difference in a meaningful way? And I mean this within the context of what you were just saying, that all the major indicators are going down, not up. The situation is getting worse, not better, not because we don't know the solutions. The solutions in many cases have been around for decades, but there's something about spiritual and emotional intelligence of the species Homo sapiens right now that won't let us either understand the obvious and therefore pick up the tools. So what do people of goodwill do in this moment? Do you take to the streets? Do you walk up to the politicians and shake them? There have been over 11,000 instances of civil unrest in the United States just in the last 3 months.
Yep.
Within this context, as we close, what should we all be doing?
Well, there's something you might say is very individual to do, and I've spoken some about that. What do we do together? So, in the big picture is to express and demonstrate oneness or universal love, to express and demonstrate our own surrender to our primal spirituality collectively. I'm not stuck on the word, but or the phrase primal spirituality, but however we do it, to demonstrate that. And I'd like to share an experience I had marching on Washington in 1969 for the moratorium against the war in Vietnam. We were on the mall, and somehow I got up close to where Pete Seeger was leading the whole group singing. And he'd come across John Lennon's song, "All We Are Saying Is Give Peace a Chance." And so here we were, we were angry. I was angry, and others are about a half. And I've read what Pete said about it later, which corroborates my own experience. But he started this song, "All We Are Saying Is Give Peace a Chance." And it, it started with all of us with protesting, but somehow it evoked prayer. And that's, and Pete said that's what he found. And he saw, fathers with their children on their shoulders and people swaying to the music. He kept it going for 20 minutes. And I think Peter, Paul, and Mary joined in. And then there was Richie Havens and others. I think Country Joe and the Fish. So
those were the good old days.
Yeah, but here I was 16 at the time, and I experienced something I'd never experienced before. It's like it went into the deepest prayer. Yeah. So I think our demonstrations have to go to that level. They have to go to a demonstration, not of a reaction against what the culture is doing. And I understand there are things to face and name about what's happening in the culture. So, I'm up for that. But ultimately, we have to go to someplace else that is more powerful and transformational. So if we truly engage in that, it has the power to suck all the energy out of the negativity of our culture instead of feeding it. And I think we have to be careful not to feed the negativity. We need to feed the creativity and find out how we do that. And I believe passionately in that.
Thank you. A perfect note upon which to close. How do we transform protest, everyone? Anger, blame, into prayer, into love, into unity consciousness. If we could do that, we could change the world. So David, thank you very profoundly for your wisdom and your softness of heart today. It's been very, very deeply moving. In that spirit, I want to turn it back over to our dear poet, Kim Rosen, who will round this dialogue off with some poetry, and then Sabinia will make some remarks, and then I'll talk a little bit about tomorrow. Thank you, David. Kim?
Thank you so much, David and Jim. What an extraordinary opportunity to dive into truth this morning. So appreciate it. Here's the poem that came to me as I listened to you, David. It's by Rainer Maria Rilke, a German poet, and with the help of my German-speaking friends, I translated it. And the music is by the amazing Gary Malkin, the soundtrack from his amazing CD called Graceful Passages. I'll put his website in the chat after this, as well as a link to the poem. The poem is called Before the Beginning by Rainer Maria Rilke, speaking of prayer. Here's one of mine. God speaks to each of us as we are made, then walks with us silently out of the night. These are the words, the numinous words we hear before we begin. You, called forth by your longing, reach to the edge of your senses. Become my body. Grow like a fire behind things, so their shadows spread and cover me completely. Let everything into you, beauty and terror. Keep going. No feeling is forever. Don't lose touch with me. Nearby is the land they call life. You will know it by its intensity. Give me your hand. Love speaks to each of us as we are made, then walks with us silently out of the night. These are the words, the numinous words we hear before we begin. You, called forth by your longing, reach to the edge of your senses. Become my body. Grow like a fire. Grow like a sun behind things, so their shadows spread and cover me completely. Let everything into you, beauty and terror. Keep going. Remember, no feeling is forever. Don't lose touch with me. Nearby is the land they call life. You will know it by its intensity. Give me your hand. Nearby is the land they call life. You will know it by its intensity. Grow like a sun behind things, so their shadows spread and cover me completely. Don't lose touch with me. Let everything into you, beauty and terror. Keep going. Remember, no feeling is forever. Give me your hand. Poem by Rainer Maria Rilke, translated by me and my German-speaking friends, and the music is by the composer Gary Malkin, Malkin. And now I have the joy of handing us back to Sabina and her beautiful guidance to finish us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim, again, for your soothing voice and your poetry. And thank you, David, for sharing your insights and knowledge and navigating us, the path of primal spirituality and the importance of tapping into our essence and then tapping into our collective essence as well. And when I listen to Kim and when I also feel the energy in the chat after we did the meditation and then listen to poetry and then listen to the dialogue, is that we are so in need of a cultural and spiritual renaissance, because it is so profound that through connecting is so easily done, whether it's in breath, but it's sort of just this space of where we all feel held and we can have different perspectives and we can talk about subjects that some might agree and some might not, but it's this creating that space where we can be coherent in our hearts and also be coherent to different truths or different realities, or having curiosity and imagination. It is so vital, especially in this time when we are lost and where society is navigated by, of course, the fear-based narrative, and we know all of that, and the catalyst of the pandemic that is also the catalyst of raising our awareness and our consciousness. But it's also so important that facilitation, somehow we're seeking the leadership of how do we step into the other direction of something that we haven't learned to innately tap into: love, compassion, kindness. It's as if we all yearn for it so much, but we think it's like a distant butterfly, whereas fear, anxiety, hate, it's easier for us to nearly tap into. And I think that's that awareness shift that we need to make. And it all starts within us, of really feeling worthy as a humanity, as an individual, as a society, that we innately came here spiritual and we are worthy of love. And we nearly have to fall in love with ourselves and with nature all over again. And I know that someone in the chat, I think it was Victoria, who mentioned, and also referring to David, I love that notion of, you mentioning there were you and all the others and, demonstration mode for what one believes is right. And then this sort of give peace a chance once again, music, lyrics, something outside of us. And all of a sudden it turned into prayer. That's sort of, there's a key there somehow. And what Victoria was saying, that she had this vision, which I've had, and I'm sure many of us have had, of, these circles of manifestations instead of demonstrations, that create an energy vortex where violence can't even, reach, because that is our innate superpower. And I think just as Greta Thunberg was for, climate change, we need to find this manifested circle of peace in all communities and around the world, and maybe transition from demonstration to manifestation. Maybe we can evolve a bit on that thought, but that seemed to a bit of consensus of also the people in the chat. So I thought that we could just end. We can maybe do more 30 seconds. I don't know if it was 1 minute before. I was so into facilitating that I didn't take time, but let's just close the circle again with the beautiful sound that I hope that maybe Richard can help us with. The beautiful sound of Om Mani Padme Hum that we listened to when we did the first heart coherence. Let's see if Richard can do that. And with that, let's just all, relax into our bodies. Feel our bodies, maybe feel the gratitude in your heart that, wow, you're in this space that echoes with what makes you feel good, joy. It's so important that we remember and take with us nuggets of wisdom, but also how does it make you feel? While you're breathing, I'll talk a bit. Just use the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inhale, and the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exhale. While you do your inhale and exhale, place your hand on your heart, or both hands on your heart. Feel your heart space. And feel how your body feels after a session like this. Have you been touched? How does it feel in your body? Where does it feel in your body to be touched, or to be part of a space where you feel, yes, this is where I belong. This is the narrative I want to follow. Or this is the poetry that touched my heart. Breathe into that. Breathe into the notion that we are not alone. You are not alone. I am not alone. We have each other. And the planet Mother Gaia has our backs. She's just telling us we need to wake up a bit now, you know? We need to fall in love with ourselves. Fall in love with our worthiness. We are worthy of love, of connection, of passion, of our wild spirit, of our primal spirituality. And each and every one of you, you're worthy of tapping into that authentic voice of yours. We can't allow separation to, put face masks on our authentic voice. And how do you find it? Through breath. Through every day just coming back to your breath, having a spiritual practice, coming back to your breath. So with that inhale, I am love. Exhale. Inhale, I am worthy. Exhale. And now just inhale any intention that you want to keep after this session. And thank you to each and every one of you. You are amazing. You are unique. You all have an authentic voice. And we are all in this together. And with that, you may come back, open your eyes, and I hand it over to Jim.
Thank you, Sabina. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone, for a beautiful session of deep spiritual, primal awakening. Tomorrow, we're going to deepen this dialogue, because tomorrow we're going to go into a very profound area of spiritual need and awareness, the whole issue of love, trauma, and transformation, the alchemy of transformation. It came out of a session that we had about 2 months ago around heart coherence that was so profound. We decided to just tease out this one little aspect of love, trauma, and the alchemy of transformation. It'll be led by David Lorimer. So we'll see everyone again tomorrow, same time, same station, 5 o'clock to 6:30 p.m. Central European Time. I thank you all and bid you good day. See you again tomorrow. Bye, everyone.